Hey everyone, this is kind of a impromptu video. I wasn't planning on filming it right now, but I was just on this hike. It was really beautiful. I ate a delicious burrito, and I'm using this as an excuse to not hike because I self-quarantined for an entire month, and boy, am I learning what that does to your body. If you watched my last video, at the very end of it, I said, hey, there will be something in a week about why I got off the Appalachian Trail this year. The answer is probably pretty obvious, but there are my own specific reasons why I got off. Yeah, so let's get into it. But let's first kind of talk about the reasons I justified actually still going out there and staying on there for even a week. I guess the reason I got off is because of COVID-19, the pandemic that has spread the globe, and what that looked like for someone hiking the Appalachian Trail. I guess the first thing that I'd say that justified me staying out there was the Appalachian Trail Conservancy's first official message didn't come out until, honestly, I think it was just hours after I'd already started. So I didn't even see it until maybe the next day, or heard about it that night at the first shelter that I stayed at. The message said, we're asking people to postpone, and I'm like, well, I'm already out here, so I just made it in the nick of time. But yeah, so that was one of the reasons I justified actually going and staying out there for a week. I guess the second reason would be there was a lot of sacrifices that got me to that point to actually leave and go and make this dream happen, that I think that those sacrifices really helped me justify staying out there and going amidst the kind of the early stages of COVID-19 reaching the United States and everything that was going on there. So that was another big reason of why I stayed out there and I went, and I know a lot of people had that same reasoning. There's just a lot of planning, a lot of thought, effort, saving, and sacrifice that goes into doing something like this that I could not just get off right away and stop doing what I had worked so hard to do. Another one of the things was, honestly, the trail felt like the ideal situation for social distancing. That was really, honestly, the mindset of almost everybody out there. A lot of people had family and friends from home who were like, stay out there. And some of them were worried about people at home. So there are people that got off for that reason, but there were also people who just stayed on the trail because it felt like better social distancing. Yeah, I felt kind of the same way there. And we would practice social distancing even at shelter. Like, we wouldn't stay in shelters. There was one that I stayed in. It was at Gooch Gap. It was 2 levels. It could sleep like 14 people, and there was only 5 in it. We kind of kept our space. And the only reason we slept in it is because, I guess, one, I wanted that experience of sleeping in a shelter, and 2, it had been raining all day, and it was still raining. So that was just kind of a nice reprieve from the weather. Everyone was avoiding the shelters for the most part. Cooking time, not so much. We'd all use the table because it was really convenient. Yeah, I think that we all there was kind of an understanding and a feeling that, this is where we should be right now. We're safe. There's less risk of spreading something because we are mostly remote. Okay, so let's kind of talk about reasons that I actually got off the Appalachian Trail. I guess one of the things that was kind of really frustrating about being on the trail during this time was it's kind of all anyone ever talked about. Having to be on the trail and be out there for specific reasons, and all of a sudden this big major thing is apparent across the entire planet, and that's what you're talking about, that's what you're worrying about. You're constantly wondering or thinking, should I go over there and sit at that table with those people? Should I stay in a shelter tonight? What are we going to do when we go into this next town to be respectful of them and the limited resources that they have, or medical resources that they have? It was just something that was always on the mind, and it was just like, I did not want to think about that while I was out there, but we had to, and it was really, really upsetting. It got to a point to where I was like in my tent every night, or whenever I had service, I would check to see if there was a message from the ATC. I would look at what's going on outside the trail, which is like, you could argue to say, well, just don't do that. But at the same time, I knew that was going to affect me, and I had to anticipate that kind of thing. I didn't want to have to think about that while I was out there. I wanted to talk to people about other things, fun things, which we did, but then it was always, there's just like this, overarching, almost like gloom or darkness over what we were doing, and I did not like it. There was my first Nero day. We went into Hiawassee, Georgia. I was in the little motel we stayed at, and I was looking at Instagram and stuff like that, as you do. I saw a post from Patagonia, and they had shared something where they recently went to Moab, and they're not from Moab. They went there for a job. They posted calling themselves out. It was something that I was like, okay, here's someone calling themselves out. Great. But I was reading what they had said. They basically said they would feel really bad if they were bringing in COVID-19 into Moab when their hospital only has 3 ventilators. And that really hit home to me because Moab is like a second home to me. I'd be devastated if something happened to that community where they were affected in such a way and their medical infrastructure was so stressed out that they could not help those in need. It started to make me think of the towns along the AT and how they're in this similar boat, or some of them are even smaller, some of them are the same size, and they would have the same risks. And I thought to myself, well, if I would be devastated about Moab, I'm someone who is, aspiring to be a thru-hiker and aspiring to be a good advocate for outdoor spaces. I have been my entire life. I started to think more about like the impact that I, as a single person, could have on these small towns, and it started to become uncomfortable for me. So I'm sitting there in Hiawassee, and I'm reading this, and I'm like, okay, this is getting uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, like, maybe not be the right word, but it started to feel a little less like a good idea to be out there. But again, all of the time and effort and sacrifice that I'd put into it, it kept me going. And me and the guy I was hiking with, Z, got back on the trail. We hiked over into Deep Gap Shelter in the pouring rain. It was awesome. It was a really incredible day. I had a honey bun that, oh my gosh, changed my life. But anyway, so I got into Deep Gap, and I'm sitting there in my tent because it's just pouring rain, and I'm dirty and nasty, and I'm feeling pretty awesome about myself. But I had service, so I'm like, well, I'm going to check and see what's going on. And I had an email from the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. And this was the email that went out almost exactly a week later from their initial kind of message. This one was from the president of the ATC specifically, and she had asked that people continue to postpone their hike, but also for anyone on the trail to actually get off the trail. The reasons really kind of struck my beliefs, I guess. They had lessened their kind of workforce in ways that would normally maintain the trail. For that weekend that I was there, the only weekend that I was actually on the trail, they had record day hiker attendance on the trail, which was a big deal. And I was at Woody Gap during, I think, a couple days before that. The garbage cans were completely full. The privies there was no toilet paper or anything in them. They looked like they hadn't been cleaned in a little while. And in her message that she sent out, she had said that their workforces are less, and so they're not able to do normal trail maintenance, specifically bathroom or privies and other trail maintenance. And I was just like, it was that night, it was just like I knew right away. I was just like, I will not be a part of a negative impact to an outdoor space, to this trail. That's not why I'm here. I'm here for different reasons. And that's where it became a moral dilemma for me. And it actually became a really easy decision. And it was that night, right after reading that, where I knew I was going to be getting off at Deep Creek Gap and heading back into Hiawassee and going home. That was my personal decision to do it. I know other people felt the same way. Other people kept going on, and I am sympathetic to them, and I understand the decisions that they had to make to do that. But for me, this was the time to stop hiking the Appalachian Trail, which was honestly a really big bummer. The next morning I woke up, my face was all swollen. And I was like, yeah, I guess maybe I should just get off the trail now. Yeah, I guess last night's decision really makes sense because my face is all swollen. Everything worked out really smoothly after that. Getting into Hiawassee was really easy. Getting my friend Tyler came and picked me up, the one who dropped me off at the trailhead, was able to come. He was only about 90 minutes away. Yeah, it was such a bummer, but it was the right decision, and I'm still happy with that decision. I'm not happy with the circumstance, but I'm happy with my decision in response to the circumstances that were presented to me at that time. The next day when I got back in Hiawassee, it was raining again, and got into a hotel, and there was a bunch of other hikers that got in there, and a lot of us were talking about getting off the trail. A lot of us were talking about going on, and some people were on the fence. I think ultimately everyone that was there did get off the trail. That very next day, or I guess that night, after I was at Deep Gap Shelter and got off at Deep Creek Gap, there was notification that the Blue Ridge Mountains were closing, the Shenandoahs were closing, a number of shelters were closing through Virginia, and a number of places were closing further up north that were months away. So they were kind of like out of my my view, but like I was only like 9 days or so, maybe 10 days from Blue Ridge Mountains. So I was just kind of like, well, yeah, are they going to open in 10 days? Yeah, not likely. Another thing that happened was the ATC reached out again a little bit more firmly, urging hikers to get off the trail. And they went so far as to say, hey, if you get off the trail before the end of March, you'll be able to pick up wherever you left off and complete the trail any other year with your 2020 AT tag, and we'll honor it as completing a through hike in a calendar year. They said if you don't, basically we will not honor it and we will not be officially credited, which, take it or leave it. They were really putting their stance out there saying, hey, this is how we feel. We want you to get off the trail. And that happened after I made a decision, so that gave me a little bit more comfort in the decision that I made as well. It's funny, I have some notes here about what's next for me, and they're outdated because I waited over a month to film this. What was next for me at the time was I'm gonna wait until the end of April, see what happens with the pandemic and things opening, maybe some rules easing up and some strict restrictions easing up. They haven't enough, essentially. Is what it comes down to. So if they would have been good by May 1st, I would have, planned on going back out to the AT and finishing. But as it stands right now, it doesn't really look like that's going to be the case this year. 2020 is a wash as far as my AT hike, through hike aspirations, and it sucks. But a lot of people have it a lot worse. I'm bummed because I had to come home from an extended vacation. I don't have a job right now, but like people have lost their jobs, have these big mortgages, they have kids they have to feed, there's so much more horrible things that could be the case for me that aren't. And I'm grateful for that. This is just a small blip of a trial that's out there right now in my life, and I don't want to portray myself as someone who's feeling so sorry for themselves. In fact, when I was at the hotel the day I got off the trail, I said to myself, I said, you know what? I feel like certain choices that I made 7 months ago have been robbed from me. And choices that I was trying to make today were robbed from me. I can't do anything about those things, but I can choose how I react. And I decided to react positively and made it a goal to be productive when I got home. So that whole month that I was home, I was being productive. I was doing a lot of artwork and trying to be positive, and I'm happy to say that it's worked, and I have a positive outlook for the future. My goal now is to get back on the trail next spring, maybe even on the same day that I got off, and pick up back where I left off. So numbers wise, I was at mile 69 of the Appalachian Trail, and then the approach trail on top of that. I'm really looking forward to get back. This isn't getting me down. I'm hoping that things will get better by then and things will be back to normal. One of the biggest things that really was a big contributor to why I got off the trail was I came out to the AT for the AT experience, and it is not there this year. It does not exist in the way that it has existed in previous years. There's just no possible way you could make it work. With so many trail closures, with hostel closures, restaurant closures, there's so much that's just not going to be there in 2020. For Appalachian Trail aspiring through hikers. I mean, if you're considering doing like a southbound hike in the summer, hopefully that'll work out. I hope it does, but I honestly don't think that anything's going to give you the experience. If you were looking for that true AT experience, I just don't think it's going to happen this year. Admittedly, like I have limited experience with it, but at the same time, I was out there and all I was thinking about was the pandemic, and was the decision of me staying out there a good one? Ultimately wasn't, but I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go and stay in the hostels I wanted to. There weren't as many people out there, which is, a good thing, but like, my intention was to be in that bubble so I can meet new people and make friends and do future trips with people that I met on the trail. In the short time I was there and the limited people that were there, I definitely met those people, but there were so much more people to meet that just had postponed their hikes. There are people that I had connected with on social media that I was looking forward to meeting while I was out there that ended up not going at all. Yeah, the AT experience, the traditional AT experience, whatever that is, you know, it doesn't exist this year, unfortunately. I hope you enjoyed that video. I plan on doing some future videos of my kind of local excursions here. I have a lot of gear that I was able to use for a week that I really enjoyed, and I'm going to continue to use so I can do some gear reviews in the future. Yeah, thanks for watching. If you found anything valuable in this, be sure to like, subscribe, share it if you want. Really curious what people are going to be doing this year. As far as their hiking adventures. Leave a comment down below. I'd like to know what you're doing. Maybe give me some ideas of where places I can go that are, you know, especially kind of closer around, like maybe some like 100-mile trails that are around in kind of the mid, you know, mountain time. That would be really cool because I definitely have some free time and I'm planning on getting back on the trail next year, so I don't want to go out and find a full-time job that I have to quit right away. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I don't know when the next video will be, but hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later.